Welcome back to the Deep Digger Sports Pod. I'm your host, Drew. My other host, right over here.
What's up? It's D. Good to see you again. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to drop some comments below. More importantly, subscribe. Today we are digging into a whole bunch of college football, baby.
Yep, and we're talking college football playoff brackets. So let's just get right into it. First looks we got here at this newest ranking has Tennessee and SMU as the first teams out. We know Indiana is still in there, but they have the upcoming matchup with Ohio State. Top four going to be Oregon, Texas, Miami, Boise. How are you feeling just on first looks on this bracket? It's pretty similar to the last one we saw, but definitely could be some shakeup going on this week.
I mean, one shakeup we've already seen is now Boise State has taken the automatic bye over BYU, which is pretty interesting. We've seen that it did knock them down a whole bunch. This took them, I believe they were like the 8th ranked last week, and now they are down to number 14. So not even one of the top 12 teams in the nation, but because they are supposedly the Big 12 champion moving forward, they get still put in this college football playoff, which is pretty interesting. And then you start to see how the matchups start to shake up. Obviously, Ohio State's kind of licking their chops here at this. If they do, in fact, get the 5 seed, they get a home playoff spot against BYU, and then they'll move on and take on Boise State.
I
I
think
don't think
Georgia.
I don't.
You
So
don't think
I don't
Texas
think
is locked?
Texas is for sure. No, they haven't played. They're the same thing that they've said about Indiana. A lot of people are turning and like Indiana fans are turning and being like, well, Texas also hasn't played anybody. Their biggest win is what Michigan, which we know Michigan hasn't done anything. They've played a pretty easy schedule. And if they go out there and lose to Texas A&M in the last week of the season, are you going to really reward them for that?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, they're sitting atop right now with the one loss in the SEC, and I think now who could even sneak their way in from the SEC? Like Tennessee, I think is in a great spot to work their way back onto this board, and then Georgia, I think should feel pretty solid that they're even in it right now, despite having the two losses. So I really just
Texas
don't know.
A&M is sitting there at number 15, so waiting in the wings. They control their own destiny. But I know a lot of Texas A&M fans right now that are shitting bricks having to go to Auburn. And so it's like they're like, okay, this would be the most Aggie thing ever if they lose to Auburn and then beat Texas.
Well, how many? Well, let me ask you this: how many three-loss SEC schools would you put in this list?
Probably none, realistically. I mean, how many losses should you rack up, really? I mean, who else is going to lose one? Are
Well,
we
I mean,
saying that
that's interesting if you say none, because what if they all continue to beat up on each other?
the Big 12 is actually more in danger of not having representation? You know what I mean? Because let's say BYU and Colorado go lose this week, then you're looking at, okay, the Mountain West is clearly above you. Then you have let's say, Army goes out and beats Notre Dame. Notre Dame is going to get knocked off, and then Army's going to step into that spot. Like, I think that you could get leapfrogged by that because we're seeing they're overvaluing Notre Dame hardcore. This is pretty ridiculous that they're sitting there ranked at the number 6 spot. So there is wiggle room for Notre Dame to lose and still be in the college football playoff. And if Army is an undefeated conference champion, they will bump BYU or Colorado in that ranking.
Well, I think there should be a winner gets in kind of thing with Army and Notre Dame here. I don't think if either team loses that game, they don't deserve to be in the playoff.
But the committee is telling you right now where they're ranked. You really think that they are going to drop them a whole 6 spots out of this?
They should. They would deserve to get dropped out if they lose. If Notre Dame loses to Army, they would
But
deserve to get dropped out.
they are giving Notre Dame and Indiana so much cushion. Indiana, again, they've played nobody. They haven't had real stuff competition. They struggled against a Michigan team that didn't have a quarterback, and the committee is rewarding them, saying like, okay, you're the number 5 spot. You have wiggle room. Just don't get killed. Same thing with Notre Dame. If they make it a competitive game against Army, I think they would reward both teams.
And are you seeing some of these wild takes that people are having against Indiana? Where who is it? Joey
Joey
Galloway
Galloway.
saying that they should bench their quarterback against Ohio State so he doesn't get hurt and save him for the playoff if they make the playoff. And then you have people saying just forfeit the game because it'll be a 1-0 loss and the committee takes the points difference into consideration. Like, come on. If it's a loss, you're out. I think regardless, I think they're saying if you lose to Ohio State, you're going to put the argument against you compared to a bunch of 2-loss SEC schools, and they're going to choose those schools over a 1-loss Indiana, I think.
I don't think so. The committee is telling you right now what they think of Indiana, and they are patting them on their butts. They're like, "Hey, good job. You've made it undefeated so far. We're going to give you the number 5 spot. You have 7 spots to fall down. We think you're going to be fine." They
If
have told you you're going to be fine.
if Miami loses the conference to SMU, are they in?
No. I don't know why everyone's losses at the beginning are not like being counted against them. Even look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's loss to a MAC school doesn't count against them, but somehow SMU is the only one who's getting penalized for their loss early on. And to continue to rank them under Miami is kind of ridiculous. They've shown that they are a better team. Miami has tried to lose game after game after game, and they continue. And now they found a way to do it. And okay, great, but they're still going to rank them above them. That's dumb.
That's just the story of college football rankings, though. If you lose early in the season, you have wiggle room to come back. If you lose later in the season, it's just kind of like recency bias. And I
Yeah, but
don't
why
think
is
that's
that not applying to SMU? SMU lost early in the season, and then they've looked great ever since.
because
And that just doesn't.
Miami's a bigger brand. They have Cam Ward, who supposedly everyone wanted to get the Heisman. People were saying, "Oh, is Cam Ward now the second quarterback off the board for the NFL draft?" Like they just have a bigger name, and I think that's what the committee is wrongfully ranking them as.
Yeah, man, I don't know. And I also think, okay, Indiana, stop having such a loser mentality, like such a loser ass arguments all week. That's been, oh well, we can't. If when we lose to Ohio State, like they're gonna just take us out. And blah, blah. Well, this is the biggest game in Indiana school history for football. Go out there and get a win. Why aren't you guys excited? You guys have a great team. You guys have supposedly been dominating competition all year. Go out there and prove it against Ohio State. You guys should be chomping at the bit to go out and get this. Instead, it's a bunch of just like, oh, well, they're going to kick us out anyways. We're going to lose. Shut up. Like, you guys, like, realistically, you all the whole season, you've been beating your chest saying how good you are, how good you are, how good you are. Go out there and prove it.
Yeah, and then what I would be so happy to see is Colorado to win the Big 12 and really get into this list and see how they compete against these bigger schools. They're really trying to, put their name on the map. They just dropped the hype video for the new 5-star quarterback they recruited. What is it? He playing Shadur's song Perfect Timing, and it's like perfect timing for them to get hot. So they definitely could steal this spot from BYU, but they have to get through Kansas, who just looked good 2 weeks in a row against quality opponents, and their corner is straight up saying like he's been waiting for this Travis Hunter matchup.
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting game. I think BYU has an interesting matchup as well this week, but we're going to start to see like teams are going to start knocking each other off. Like, and we've said that all season, like, oh, just wait till we get down the stretch. But again, is this too many teams in contention? Like, is this going to start to be a dog pile at the end? Because I mean, we were expecting teams to be eliminated from contention like 2-3 weeks ago, and it just hasn't happened. Everyone's kind of stuck around and been like, oh, okay, there are so many still possibilities of what this college football playoff year could look like. Was it a mistake to go up to 12? Was it like, okay, the perfect year to go up to 12 because there is no like clear cut number one dog?
Well, is it the fact that like these teams aren't playing each other enough? Like they're all 1 or 2 losses and no one's dropping another game against like bad teams. A lot of them have kind of skated by. I mean, you talk Miami, we said had a cupcake schedule all season. You're saying Indiana has a weak schedule. Texas, who have they beat? BYU, they who have they really beaten? Boise State, and it's like you could look at more than half of these teams. You could kind of question their schedule validity and be like, well, if they played this guy's schedule, if they played this team's schedule, would they even be here?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, again, some things needs to be fixed within the Big Ten and the SEC because more of these teams have to start playing each other. It does feel like the SEC is getting a little bit more like shit to it this year just because they are cannibalizing each other. And Tennessee fans, I know they feel like out of the loop here. Like, hey, why are we getting the short end of the stick here? When we've faced competition, we faced more competition than Boise State. We faced more competition than Indiana, than Notre Dame. Why are we left out?
Yeah, and that's why I think they could get in when it's all said and done, especially with the Indiana loss. Like I don't think personally Indiana would deserve a spot if they lose to Ohio State. But
they, again, where they're ranked, it would be different if they were ranked number 10, if they were in Georgia's spot rather than where they're at number 5,
and I
because the
think
committee is telling you that they have wiggle room.
and what I think it is too is the committee saying, well, we need another Big Ten team in here because they're one of the big conferences. Like, let's, Indiana, we can keep it pretty even with the SEC. Let's keep them in there to kind of prop up the Big Ten when the Big Ten clearly isn't that great this year.
Yeah, no, it really hasn't. I mean, even Penn State's getting in just because they lost to Ohio State by a couple points. Like, they haven't had a big marquee win this entire season either.
Yeah. Who has Oregon played?
Boise State.
They beat
Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, okay, they have a couple wins, but it's not like they played a gauntlet like Georgia.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but to be fair, not even all the SEC schools had a gauntlet. Like, if we're going to be completely honest, Texas again skated by.
Yeah, I think they need to take in consideration the strength of schedule way more into these rankings because it does feel like so unbalanced on like what are we really basing these on? If it was strength of schedule, then put Georgia higher. If it's just winning games, then fucking I guess Indiana's the number 2 team because they're undefeated. If it's performance on the field, like how close or how much you're winning by, then like we need to figure out like what are the metrics. And then if a team loses, that needs to weigh the most heavily on where they're ranked. I think winning a game, even like say Miami won out, I'm like, okay, you deserve to be there. You won all your games. Who cares? You won your conference. But the fact that they lost, I think needs to be taken more seriously to be like, okay, well, you haven't beat anyone great. You're barely winning games, and now you lost. So that should drop you down that more than 10 spots you should drop down.
Yeah, and then but then they're going to turn around and be like, okay, well, we've been ahead this whole time, and SMU has an early loss. Shouldn't that be penalized? Like, I hate that argument. Like, we had posted something yesterday, I believe, and someone was like, well, Tennessee lost to Arkansas. It's like, okay, no shit, but like, we're talking about now. We're talking about the here and now. We've seen before, like, we've seen now that loss, but also the rest of the season play out. Like, we don't need to hold things against people. And then people will take that argument and be like, okay, well, then the Notre Dame loss to a MAC school team doesn't really count. It's like, but that's different. There's levels. There's levels to this.
Well, and the thing is, too, like, we can't be arguing, like I said, Tennessee, when they lost to Arkansas, dropped them down further. They need to work their way back. But the fact that it's been weeks past that, the board has completely changed. The circumstances have completely changed. Like, you can't have the same argument from 6 weeks ago till now because the board didn't go the way that we were like, oh, they deserve to go here. They deserve to go there. Like, we're basing arguments off of where they're ranking them right now.
Yeah. And so I could see this board still changing quite a bit here. I mean, realistically, I do think SMU is going to jump Miami. I think that someone's going to jump Texas because they haven't been tested. The only time they got tested was by Georgia and got blown out. I mean, so let's kind of be real about that. Like, once they face a very good defensive line, it's going to be a different story. And I mean, you got to be, if you're a Texas A&M fan, you've got to be kind of chomping at the bit but then also worried because you have to go through an Auburn team that has nothing to lose.
Yeah, but if you can't beat Auburn, like you never deserve to be here in the first place.
Yeah, I mean that's again loser A&M, like loser mentality. Like Texas A&M fans, be better. Come on, you're supposed to go out there and know that you're going to smash bad teams. That's what good teams do. And if you're over here worried about Auburn, like, but
Like
I'm hearing it online. I'm seeing it
I don't
online.
want to hear anyone complain that their team didn't make the playoff, but at the end of the season we had to face Auburn or we had to face Vandy or like anything like that. It's like, bro, get up out of the SEC then, because if you're not gonna be one of the top teams in that conference and beat up on an Auburn or something, like you don't deserve to be there. Like,
Yeah, just
just
sit your quarterback and then still get a playoff spot.
yeah, be content with where you're in the middle of the fucking top 25 then. But yeah, don't complain about having a matchup with fucking Auburn. All right. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on in this playoff bracket?
um, who do you think wins it in this bracket?
I literally had no idea. I'm still. I think I'm gonna go Georgia. Like I think they're the best team still in the country.
I think Ohio in this bracket specifically, Ohio State.
And I'm once again asking, are we taking Oregon serious at any point this season?
I don't know. We just watched them struggle against Wisconsin. I don't know if that's just because, hey, like it was a sleepy Saturday and like, hey, we just kind of overlooked them. But I mean, we'll see how they look this week. I'm not taking them as seriously. I don't think they're a true number one. I think there's other teams in the country that are better than them, but you have to stick them here because they are undefeated.
All right. Here's a better question. Out of this list, who would you say even has a shot at it? Like four or five teams. Like I'd say like Ohio State,
Mm-hmm.
Bama, Georgia, Penn State, Ole Miss. Like those are the teams I think have a shot at it. And then Texas is kind of a dark horse for me. Like I think their offense get hot enough and just throw the lights out, but it'd be tough.
I don't think Texas has a chance, if I'm going to be honest. I've seen both Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning get their shit kicked by Georgia. I think I'm good off that. I would say Georgia, Ole Miss. I do have to give respect to Oregon, even though like we haven't seen it multiple times throughout this season. How they looked against Ohio State, I think is really good. And then I'd give it to Ohio State as well. So I think that's the 4.
Bama versus Oregon second round. Who wins that game? Do you think Oregon could win that game?
Yeah, I think Bama could shit down their legs for sure. I think Bama has the propensity. Like I know we've seen their high highs, but we've also seen them lose to a Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're not going to act like they're some world beater. Again, I like the SEC. I think it's cool. I'm more like personally just watching. I like the Big 12. I like the Big 12 a lot, but I understand why SEC hardos like are like, oh well, this is the best conference. We have the best competition. But let's not act like any of these like teams are world beaters. All of them have their flaws, especially so Bama just times forgets how to play. Georgia, their Heisman winning potential quarterback just sucks. And then Ole Miss, they lost to a Kentucky team at home because they just can't. Lane Kiffin was not a good coach on that day, and that just happens sometimes with Ole Miss. They just forget how to like. Oh, Texas, we know that they don't have an offensive line, so like all of these, you can poke holes into all the SEC teams.
All right. Well, that's all we got for today. Please, guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be here next week with the next rankings.
All right, later.